Hello, English speakers. Welcome to SNS. I am Martin, your English practicing partner, and I am delighted to have you here. This channel is a place where we learn together, not only through lessons, but by practicing English in a calm, steady, and encouraging way. The story we will practice today is built around the theme of courage and determination. I will read it slowly, clearly, and in simple English so that you can follow along with ease. Your role is very straightforward. Listen closely and repeat after me. Try to match my rhythm, my pauses, and my tone. In this way, you will train both your ears and your voice to move naturally in English. As you practice, you will begin to feel the difference. Your words will flow more smoothly, your confidence will increase, and you will notice that English starts to feel less like a subject you study and more like a language you can actually use. Each session may seem like a small step, but together, they lead you closer and closer to fluency. There is no need to write things down or to memorize long word lists. This is not about grammar exercises or tests. It is about listening, repeating, and making English a living part of your daily conversations. If you find this practice helpful, I kindly ask you to give the video a thumbs up. It helps more learners discover these lessons, and it encourages me to create even more content for you. Please also subscribe to SNS so you can join us regularly and keep improving alongside many other learners from around the world. Let me leave you with a thought for motivation. As Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." Remember this as you practice, because every effort you make today will bring you closer to your goal. Now, take a deep breath, focus your mind, and let us begin our shadowing practice together. In the heart of a verdant valley, nestled between the whispering mountains and the gurgling river, lived a peasant named Elias. His small thatched roof cottage was a testament to a life lived on the cusp of hardship. Weather-beaten and bowed by the years, it was a home built of ingenuity and thrift, much like the man himself. Elias was not a man of great physical strength, but his mind, sharp and agile, was his most formidable tool. His hands were calloused from a lifetime of toil, his face etched with the worry lines of a man constantly calculating how to feed his family from a rocky, uncooperative plot of land. Elias had not always been so burdened. He had inherited his small farm from his father, who had inherited it from his father, and so on, for generations. The land was not rich, but it was honest. For years, Elias had eked out a decent living, selling his modest crops at the village market. He and his wife, Ilara, had 3 and bright, demanding eyes. They were a constant source of both joy and financial strain. Elias loved them fiercely and worked from dawn until dusk to ensure their bellies were full and their clothes were patched, if not new. But the seasons had turned against him. A long dry spell had withered his crops, and the river, his only source of irrigation, had dwindled to a sluggish trickle. The subsequent winter had been brutal, killing off his meager livestock. Elias and Ilara found themselves in a new kind of despair, the gnawing anxiety of not knowing where the next meal would come from. Elias had to sell off his few prized possessions, his wife's beautiful silver comb, his father's old axe, and even his son's hand-carved toy horse, just to buy enough seed for the coming planting season. One evening, as Elias sat by the hearth, the last embers of the fire casting long, dancing shadows, he looked at his wife and children. Ilara was mending their son's worn tunic, her face pale and exhausted. His children were huddled together for warmth, their laughter no longer as carefree as it once was. A deep, heavy weight settled in his chest. He was a good man, an honest man, but honesty wasn't going to save them from starvation. Elias knew he had to do something, anything, to turn their fortunes around. He wasn't thinking of riches, just survival. The next morning, with a heavy heart, Elias headed to his field. The soil felt brittle and lifeless under his worn leather boots. He began to till the land, his movements slow and methodical, the rhythmic scraping of the hoe a mournful song. He worked until the sun was high in the sky, and his thirst was a fiery ache in his throat. It was then that he saw it, a strange, unnatural fire, burning brightly in the center of his field. The blaze did not consume the dry grass around it, nor did it give off any smoke. It simply burned, a pulsating crimson heart. Intrigued, Elias cautiously approached. He was a superstitious man and had heard stories of strange happenings on the land, but desperation had stripped him of fear. As he got closer, the heat intensified, and he could make out a dark, horned figure sitting cross-legged in the middle of the flames. It was the devil, his eyes glowing like hot coals. A malicious grin spread across his face. "Well, well," the devil purred, his voice like the crackle of dry twigs. "Look what we have here, a peasant, and on my treasure." He gestured with a clawed hand to a huge iron-bound chest at his side. The chest was overflowing with gold and shimmering silver. Elias, though his heart hammered against his ribs, did not show his fear. He had faced down droughts, famines, and bitter winters. What was a devil compared to the wrath of nature? "This is my field," Elias said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his knees. "And anything buried in it belongs to me." The devil threw his head back and let out a cackle that sounded like falling rocks. "Your field? The land is barren, mortal. Your crops are worth less than the dirt they grow in. But I have an offer for you. I will give you this chest of gold and all the wealth you can imagine, if you agree to a bargain." Elias was wary. He knew better than to trust the Prince of Lies, but his family's hungry faces flashed in his mind. "What is your bargain?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Simple," the devil replied, his grin widening. "For the next 2 years, I shall have half of everything your field produces. You take one half, and I take the other. A fair division, no?" He snapped his fingers, and a parchment and quill appeared, ready for a signature. "And I shall have the fruits of your earth, the things that grow, for I am weary of the riches of the underworld." Elias thought for a long moment. He had seen the way the devil looked at the land, with a kind of possessive, unfamiliar hunger. The devil, for all his power, knew nothing of the earth's rhythm, the secret ways of farming. Elias saw a flicker of an idea, a mischievous spark that had lain dormant since his youth, a time before desperation had made him solemn. "I agree," Elias said, and the devil's smile grew wider, revealing long, pointed teeth. "But there's a condition. To avoid any future squabbles, we must decide now how to divide the crop. For the first year, everything that grows above the ground will be yours. Everything that grows below the ground will be mine." The devil, a creature of grand schemes and lofty ambitions, gave a derisive snort. He considered the agreement. The rich, green stalks of wheat, the juicy apples hanging from trees, the succulent berries, they all grew above ground. The peasant was an idiot. He would be left with nothing but dirty roots and inedible stems. The devil was so sure of his cleverness, so confident that he had cheated the peasant, that he agreed without a second thought. "It is a deal," the devil proclaimed, the parchment glowing with a sinister light as Elias touched the quill. The chest of gold remained firmly in place, its contents tantalizingly out of reach. Elias did not waste a moment. He went to his tool shed, and with a renewed spring in his step, he began to work the land as he never had before. Instead of wheat or rye, he planted turnips. The season passed with a gentle rain and a warm sun. The turnips thrived. Their great, green, small, leafy tops spreading across the field, but their rich, earthy bulbs grew hidden beneath the soil. The devil, being of a subterranean nature, spent most of his time in the depths of the earth, only occasionally rising to the surface to check on the progress of his investment. He saw the lush, green foliage and was pleased. "Such beautiful leaves," he would mutter to himself, unaware of the fortune that lay beneath his feet. Harvest time arrived, and the devil, arriving in a swirl of brimstone and smoke, stood triumphantly in the middle of the field. "The harvest is mine," he bellowed. "The glorious fruits of your labor belong to me." He began to gather the broad, leafy greens, stacking them into a mountain of inedible foliage. Then Elias arrived with his cart. With a silent, knowing smile, he plunged his hands into the soil and began to dig. One by one, he unearthed the fat, white turnips, their delicious aroma filling the air. He piled them high in his cart. A feast for his family. The devil watched in stunned silence, a look of utter confusion on his demonic face. He was left with nothing but a pile of bitter leaves, a pile of worthless fodder that would do him no good at all. The devil's face twisted in rage, his eyes burning with an unholy fire. "You tricked me, peasant," he roared, shaking a fist filled with withered leaves. "I will have my revenge. Next year, the arrangement will be reversed. What grows above the ground will be yours, and what is below will be mine." Elias simply shrugged, his cart laden with turnips. "As you wish," he said calmly, already planning his next move. The next year, Elias worked even harder. He and Alara, with the memory of the turnip's sweet flavor still fresh in their minds, tilled and sowed. This time, Elias planted wheat. The tall, golden stalks of grain grew in a dense, shimmering mass, and feel a smug sense of victory. "The roots are mine," he would whisper to himself, dreaming of a meal of rich, earthy wheat roots. He would never have thought to ask about the parts of the plant, assuming that the roots of a grain would be substantial. The summer sun shone brightly, and the wheat ripened to a perfect golden hue. As the day of the harvest arrived, Elias went to his field, his scythe gleaming in the sunlight. He began to cut the stalks. His movements practiced, he looked up, his rage boiling over. Elias was just finishing loading his cart, the golden wheat gleaming in the sun, the devil's fiery eyes fixed on the precious grain, a sight that was all the more infuriating for its inaccessibility. You have cheated me again," he howled, his voice a torrent of pure malice. Elias simply smiled, his hands dusty but his heart full. "We had an agreement," he said. "The roots are yours. The grain which grew above the ground is mine." The devil, utterly defeated, shrieked in fury. His greed had blinded him. His pride had led him to assume he knew more than a simple peasant. He had been outsmarted, not once, but twice by a mortal. With a final, ear-splitting wail of frustration, he vanished, a cloud of smoke and ash marking his departure. As the smoke cleared, Elias saw that the great iron chest was still there, sitting exactly where the devil had left it. The fire was gone, and the treasure was his for the taking. Elias and Ilara lived a long, prosperous life from that day forward. Elias had not just won gold, he had won his dignity back, proving that wit and intelligence can overcome brute force and evil intentions. His children never went hungry again, and they grew up hearing the tale of how their clever father had bested the devil himself, all thanks to a little knowledge and a whole lot of common sense. All right, friends, now I'm going to share the meanings of some of the difficult words from the story. I'll explain what each word means, how it's used in the story, and give you a simple alternative. Try to practice these words in your daily conversations. It will really help you sound more confident in English. Audacious, meaning showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. Example sentence: Elias made an audacious bargain with the devil, wagering the entire harvest on his wit. Alternative: bold. Bereft, meaning deprived of or lacking something, sad and lonely because of something or someone who has been taken away. Example sentence: bereft of his precious gold, the devil howled in fury before disappearing. Alternative: deprived brimstone, meaning sulfur, especially in its association with hell. Example sentence: the devil appeared in a swirl of brimstone and smoke, making the air thick with the stench of the underworld. Alternative: sulfur, cacophonous, meaning involving or producing a harsh, discordant mixture of sounds. Example sentence: the devil's cacophonous cry of defeat echoed through the valley, startling the nearby wildlife. Alternative: loud. Calloused, meaning having an area of hardened, thickened skin. Example sentence: Elias's hands, calloused from a lifetime of toil, plunged into the rich soil to retrieve his prize. Alternative: hardened, meaning a deep fissure in the earth's surface. Example sentence: after being outsmarted, the devil vanished into a chasm in the earth, returning to his dark domain. Alternative: crack. Cunning, meaning having or showing skill in achieving one's ends by deceit or evasion. Example sentence: the cunning peasant knew exactly how to trick the devil with his clever farming scheme. Alternative: clever. Derisive, meaning expressing contempt or ridicule. Example sentence: the devil let out a derisive snort when he first heard Elias's proposed bargain. Alternative: mocking. Despair, meaning the complete loss or absence of hope. Example sentence: the family was in a state of deep despair when the harvest failed and hunger loomed. Alternative: hopelessness. Dwindled, meaning diminish gradually in size, amount, or strength. Example sentence: the peasant watched his river, his lifeline for irrigation, as it dwindled to a mere trickle. Alternative: decreased. Eerie, meaning strange and frightening. Example sentence: the unnatural fire burned with an eerie glow in the middle of the field. Alternative: creepy. Ekid, meaning to make a living with difficulty. Example sentence: for many years, Elias had eked out a decent living from his uncooperative plot of land. Alternative: scraped embers, meaning a small piece of glowing or smoldering coal or wood in a dying fire. Example sentence: Elias sat by the hearth, the last embers of the fire casting long shadows across the room. Alternative: coals, formidable, meaning inspiring fear or respect through being impressively large, powerful, mighty, intense, or capable. Example sentence: Elias's mind, sharp and agile, was his most formidable tool against the devil's power. Alternative: impressive, meaning pitifully sad and abandoned or lonely. Example sentence: The sight of his forlorn family filled Elias with a deep need to find a solution. Alternative: miserable. Frugal, meaning sparing or economical with regard to money or food. Example sentence: The family's small cottage was a testament to their frugal but ingenious way of life. Alternative: thrifty. Harrowing, meaning acutely distressing. Example sentence: The past few seasons of drought and famine had been a harrowing experience for the entire village. Alternative: traumatic. Ingenuity, meaning the quality of being clever, original, and inventive. Example sentence: Elias's clever trick against the devil was a perfect example of his peasant ingenuity. Alternative: cleverness. Intrigue, meaning arouse the curiosity or interest of. Example sentence: The unnatural fire in the middle of his field was enough to intrigue Elias and draw him closer. Alternative: fascinate. Lackluster, meaning lacking in vitality, force, or conviction, uninspired or uninteresting. Example sentence: The devil's reward for his first year was a lackluster pile of bitter leaves, a truly uninspired result. Malicious, meaning intending or intended to do harm. Example sentence: The devil's malicious grin promised trouble for Elias and his family. Alternative: spiteful, methodical, meaning done according to a systematic or established procedure. Example sentence: Elias worked in a slow and methodical way, never revealing his cunning plan to the devil. Alternative: organized, modest, unassuming or moderate in the estimation of one's abilities or achievements. Example sentence: Elias sold his modest crops at the village market, enough to get by, but not to thrive. Alternative: humble, mournful, meaning expressing or inducing sadness, regret, or grief. Example sentence: The rhythmic scraping of Elias's hoe seemed like a mournful song as he tilled the barren soil. Alternative: sad. That is the end of our story today. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful for your English practice. If there was a word or phrase that you found particularly difficult to repeat, please let me know in the comments. Your feedback is valuable and helps me understand what our community needs most. Also, if you have a suggestion for the next story you would like to shadow, please feel free to share it below. Your ideas are what make this channel a place for all of us to learn and grow together. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to practicing with you again soon.